I am so going to regret this.
Break up.
Everything you know is wrong. Black is white, up is down, and short is long. And everything you thought was just so important doesn't.
So, Mass Effect 3. Look, we all know why this game is infamous. I am far from the first person on the internet to comment on it, and there is a lot of trepidation for Mass Effect Andromeda by how it seems to be ignoring the problem entirely instead of addressing it and properly putting it to rest. As by doing so, it destroys the story potential which still exists in that past setting for an entirely other one intrinsically removed from it. In fact, I'm going on record that they should not have even done anything with the Reapers in the third game due to how they subverted progressing in avenues to searching for a way to properly defeat them in the second game and entirely ignore such here. The seed should have been left to a fourth one, while the third was focused on actually rallying the galaxy and finding more tools with which to counter them from other Prothean beacons and archives. You know, kind of what Dead Space was doing before Electronic Arts fucked with them as well and canned their fourth entry. As I pointed out in the Mass Effect 2 reviews, they have documented evidence of the Reapers and their activities now. If not the data records from the Dead Reaper, then the experiences with the Heretic Geth and Collectors which prove the inconsistencies with the statements the Council used to write them all off. Hell, there could be a tertiary plot about some of the Reapers making it through the relay we blew up while Shepard was unconscious as a Vanguard subversion force, to show there's even more of those ships. And the open dialogue with the Geth through Legion allowing direct refutment with military action now performable against them as an additional show of force. Unfortunately, no, on pretty much all of the points. Instead, they pulled what they did with Mass Effect 2 and derailed the natural story progression points. If you'll remember back to my original Mass Effect review, I opened the video with the descriptor on it of this series had problems long before the third ending reared its head. And this is pretty much a culmination of those problems by repeating the same damn mistakes. However, at the same time it isn't, because they fucking changed who was writing the series! Drew Karpshin, sorry, I still don't know how to pronounce the guy's name, was the main writer for Mass Effects 1 and 2, but he was reassigned to write Star Wars The Old Republic, a game that, from what I've learned of it, had the same narrative failings as ME1 and 2. Not bad, but when you sat down to think of them, you realized a lot of very negative connotations with the setting and how people were unjustly idiots and uncaring about things that they really should have, alongside the general gameplay having in spades all of just BioWare's general failings of game development. Still, Mass Effect 2 seemed a lot like it was written and designed to appeal to people who didn't like the first one, so its divergences, while exceedingly frustrating, especially if you liked the first game, did help to show things are not so simple, and allowed them to instead more broadly expand perspective of the setting beyond the Citadel and frontier regions of the galaxy, and give some more difficult moral quandaries, especially with us being forced to work with a terrorist organization to get anything done because all of the other governments had their heads up their asses over this. The main story plot could still be pretty stupid, especially with the various plot railroading points, but at least you could have fun with it and its side character stories which were its real strengths. But the new head writer, Mac Walters, who had only written a small fraction of the side quests, none of which had any impact on the overall narrative as far as I've found, has shown in interviews to be someone that not only hated the first one, he despised the second one as well on a personal level, as pretty much everything here is thrown out with regards to backstory, lore, and racial motivations whenever they wanted, alongside the game's producer Casey Hudson being fully on board with doing that. This is the one that now provides a retconned context that the Asari attempted to conquer the galaxy through generational subjugation and manipulation of conflict. That straight up changes the modus operandi of the Reapers. That ignores most of how Mass Effect 2 went down and rewrites nearly all of its events in retrospect. And that now says the insidious menace of indoctrination, according to the staff, doesn't exist. Despite so much of the plot using it as an automatic write-off for far too much of the story. I'm not kidding on that last one. They said that to discredit the indoctrination theory about the ending and pieces of the game's narrative. And most of this game not only forgets the strengths of the series, and especially disrespects its characters, but spends its time slamming the narrative developments of the second game, one where you were written into a corner to follow it, and instead of recognizing that, it makes all of it Shepard's fault for not choosing options he didn't have, the player's fault with even buying and going along with the story, and BioWare's fault of trying to build a universe of potential and wonder, and thus allows it to all just be straight up torn down during its events. The rest of the writing staff tried to maintain what they could of the arcs developed in the previous entries, even with the changed premises. But according to several of them, Walters and Hudson are responsible for the ending we got, alongside the later extended cut BioWare created after the entire fandom revolted, which didn't fix things or even really tried to. And trust me, we'll get to it. I'm just saying that, even before we get to the ending, if this game was supposed to be the proper conclusion to the trilogy, it is inherently disappointing and insulting as so few of them are properly addressed, to the point many consider the original trilogy to be unfinished outside of the Tuchanka and Rannoch campaigns. And again, only because of the writers who wrote the past arcs being on the game, so they weren't entirely fucked up. But the issues are pretty much present from the opening of the game, and Shepard's trial.
Excuse me? You will be given ample opportunity to present your defense. And when all evidence is heard, we will decide the outcome.
Wait, I'm sorry. Not only that is the wrong clip with the wrong John Shepard, why did I miss making a Stargate Atlantis joke all of this time? Anyways, I am someone that follows logical narrative progression that expected us to be put on fucking trial because the end of Mass Effect 2, well, its post-game DLC ending that narratively happens last, had us destroy an inhabited system! Yeah, this game immediately starts on the wrong foot with me because we are not on trial. We are just being fucking debriefed on the events of the second game. And we have to sit through them lambasting everything out of context to our actual actions, and mostly disregarding the only actual crime we committed. The Batarians should be calling for our heads. We should be in court being tried for our actions. And it's just 3 military assholes we don't even report to anymore that have kept us doing nothing for 6 fucking months! I'm not even 10 minutes in, and I already hate everything that's been presented. Mass Effect 2, at least, you could rationalize their Geth extermination mission, as opposed to finding more Prothean artifacts, being as a means to getting a lead, which is more narratively understandable, a diversion, before that's waylaid into the Collector's plot. But I shouldn't even be starting from there, as even when setting up this game, I had an absolutely horrid time even getting it to play. There is a system bug with the game brought about from Electronic Arts mandates that you have to have an Electronic Arts account, which you must connect to separately from any DLC you've downloaded already, for that DLC to be usable in the game. The problem is the programming for such is so bugged that the game can completely lock up when trying to read the state of such DLC, and whether you have permission to use it outside of its existence on your fucking hard drive. And because so much of the software updates are solely DLC patches which are required to have the game even run, the entire system can freeze and crash. It's been 4 years. It's been a problem since they first released the game in 2012, and they never fixed it. And this is only the beginning of how broken the game actually is. For it has constant audio errors, where the sound completely cuts out or is muted in comparison to everything else going on, and it occurs completely at random. Reset? It's gone from one line, but then another could have that occur instead, to say nothing of the music playing too loud or being gone entirely when it should be present. Constantly characters are supposed to be holding items, but such are completely invisible. And I mean in the 4 kids invisible guns kind of invisible. In fact, several times the guns on my Shepard weren't even there, either considered invisible, or the game completely changed all of my equipment loadouts and leveling stats to completely different settings. And the graphical errors in the character models of Shepard and the rest of the cast have been a long-mocked element of this game as well, reaching the tier of memeticism. To say nothing about how just awful the conversations with the NPCs is directed. Oh my god, would you zoom out and turn down your wide-angle lens so we can actually see the profiles of the characters? I mean, you did a horrible job programming them having body language this time around, but some of this is fucking basic story staging you're screwing up, which BioWare is known for doing far better. And this has to be some of the most stupid AI I have seen from a game of this time period. Constantly my companions would get stuck on some object or another on the battlefield and be completely unmovable and not doing anything in the battle, so I'd be stuck going solo for entire missions. These are easily more stupid than the Donald and Goofy AIs in Kingdom Hearts. It is legitimately that bad. And unfortunately they broke the game save importation system as well, which absolutely infuriated me as I went through doing everything in the last 2 games, not just for the purposes of review, but so I could actually unlock every fucking thing you were supposed to, which was to have a conclusion in this game. You know, so I could actually do as my show mandates and try to do everything even if I suck at it. This last one being seen as early as when it read my ME2 game save data and said I romanced Ashley in Mass Effect 1. No, I didn't. She was stalking me. You all saw that. For fuck's sake, this is what happens when you let Liara down easy. It defaults to her even when you then repeatedly need to turn her down. Frickin' hell, BioWare's save imports are so glitchy compared to CyberConnect's. And CyberConnect's past save upload works perfectly across 7 fucking games on the PlayStation 2. The latter 3 being released years later. This is not the only problem I had with my previous game save imports and it reading the wrong information, or data about that save not flagging. I'll swing back to it, as one of the even more infuriating things I saw was something that went against the entire paradigm for not only Mass Effect, but pretty much all merit to BioWare's games that I have never seen anyone that's talked about this game actually mention. Removing the freedom of player choice and role-playing by its showcasing an automatic, pre-scripted conversation mode. Why the fuck would a game series where your player choices impact the story have an automatic conversation mode? Unless you thought the player was that fucking stupid or the pride of your narrative superseded that. And all the more irritating is how the game punishes you for making choices the screenwriter disagrees with and diverges from that pre-scripted path. Even if the option you make makes more fucking sense or aligns with your personal beliefs or morality. And I'm not kidding on that. The game actively punishes you constantly for taking any, and I mean any, of the Renegade prompts. Meaning any character nuance you might have had to your Shepard on what might be their berserk buttons of an otherwise Paragon player irritated the events surrounding themselves. In other words, how I play Mass Effect. Or you spent the last 2 games manning a full Renegade that focused on results over pandering, will regularly be screwed over if you choose any option that is traditionally in red. Someone tallied the scores, and by playing a Renegade, you can lose around 30% of all potential war assets the game has. Meaning if you played the game before they patched it and reduced the requisite number of war assets, even before the DLC expansions gave more opportunity for such, unless you played multiplayer, it was impossible to actually max out Galactic Readiness as a Renegade. You'd need to pretty much spend the game length again stuck in multiplayer to increase the percentage of the Galactic Readiness rating your war assets gave you, and even that for some was not even enough. So you could end up actively screwed out of anything but the bad ending, when beforehand a Renegade's ruthlessness was nothing but a tool to get a job done, and was not seen in the perspective of a black option in black-white morality. Paragon was just a diplomatic and soft-handed approach. Renegade was an assortment of shocking actions, piercing through fogs of bullshit, and raising you suck speeches. That was what made it fun! And the thing about this is one of BioWare's strengths in storytelling is how events playing out can be customized to the role one wants to play. You want to be a douchebag annoyed at the situations they're shunted into? You can do that. You want to be the smarmy intellectual jackass that insults anyone that doesn't realize the frickin' obvious? Boom! You can do that! It's a validation of their illusion of choice, and having choice as the theme throughout their productions. That we play through the story they craft in a way where we have an impact on fulfilling the narrative. But doing this, from the beginning of the game, before you even see a single line of dialogue presenting the story of it, it destroys that illusion, makes one terrified of even attempting it, and thus constantly makes one second guess what you're going to do, and removes any agency from the choices you make. Once you realize that they sabotaged actually being bitter, or angry, or choosing a snarky response as described by the prompt, it takes the fun out of getting into the role, as you are forced to be the diplomat, forced to play toady to the demands of whoever has war assets needed to get to the ending. The automatic conversation mode being there is reflective of them removing the narrative theme of choice from the game's story. Because anytime you diverge from it, you lose means by which to achieve the greatest possible victory. I've never seen a game that does anything like this. Well, okay, Undertale, but there, it's part of the game's overall message and thematic of bridging connections being more fun, alongside its commentary on traditional kill the monster because it's a monster RPGs, as opposed to going against a previous aspect of it. I'm going to do Undertale at some point. And worse, and where Undertale zigged where this zagged, whereas before there could be nuances to the jackassery of the renegade path of one being fed up with dealing with either morons or the scum of the galaxy, ME3 frames renegade players as little more than a monstrous sociopath, at least from the renegade prompts I actually took, which the prior games avoided, as part of it trying to bash people who liked ME2. It's not in service to the story, it's so as to make one be forced to align themselves with the pre-scripted path if they wanted to see the end goal to all of this. Then again, that would have been assuming BioWare by this point wasn't trying to write checks it couldn't cash on that conclusion, since the guy who knew what he was doing was nowhere near it. But it's still disrespectful to your fans and players to treat them as invalids when before you gave them the opportunity to shape the nuances to how we carried out your overarching story. ME3's combat dynamics are mostly the same as last time, only now adding in a lot more weapon variety and restoring the weapon modding seen from ME1 to more align with the heatsink system of ME2. New items being able to affect clip capacity, accuracy, penetration power, while also removing entirely the heavy weapons dynamic that, frankly, I barely used anyways due to the ammo limitations and it not refueling between missions. But unfortunately, they now added the limitation of weapon weight, a new, vastly unnecessary gameplay dynamic whose only purpose is to slow down the use of any special teammate powers, or as an alternate consequence restricting what weapons you can carry. The more weapons you load up with, the more weight you're carrying, and that's not even getting into how the weight of each weapon varies wildly. Programmers, I think you forgot something. It's something called the Mass Effect, which affects weight and gravity, and the fact we put on a suit of power armor. And yeah, despite statting in as a soldier, again, meaning I should have all the physical training necessary to easily carry whatever I damn well please like I did in the last two games, if I carried more than 3 weapons, I was overweight. But while ammo was not as scarce as it was in ME2 in the related environment, I still found myself running out of ammo in, well, everything if I only carried 3 weapons, from the combination of being short on rounds and many of the programmed-in ammo stockpiles on a mission map being glitched to not actually dispense any ammo at all. I had ammo management issues until I reacquired the Mattock heavy rifle from the last game, and found the best weapons from that one to quickly prove themselves as the best ones in this one as well. I admittedly swapped out the Incisor rifle from last time for its newest successor, a fully automatic sniper rifle, but simply so I could mod it so the rapid fire mowed down everything at range. It had an ammo capacity better than most of the assault rifles, so damn did that thing get use. But by proxy, it vastly discouraged me once again from ever giving a second glance to any other gear due to the unnecessary imposed limitation, making me desire to stick to the lighter ones with high ammo capacity regardless. With the Matic especially, as I'd actually gotten pretty decent with its rapidly tap the trigger button as it's not an automatic assault rifle nonsense. even though I did lose feeling in my fingers quite often. Though when I did experiment with the other gear, it was only to learn that most of them sucked entirely, and that the Asari could not make a shotgun that works to save their fucking lives. As even at point-blank range, it missed!
Who doesn't understand that his primary weapon has an effective range much shorter than most weapons?
Anyways, the main storyline for this thing begins 6 months after the end of ME2, with Hackett learning all of Earth's deep space outposts have gone dark. Yes, Deep Space Outpost. When the Reapers came through the mass relay, and there being a lot of traffic to and from that relay to tip them off to such. I mean, I would assume they went through the mass relay, as getting to, well, anywhere in the galaxy without one takes a ridiculous amount of time in this franchise. 6 months would be a conservative estimate, as it took them 2 years to even get near the galaxy after Nazara's death woke them up. And remember, there, they were considered to be just outside the galactic rim, and their forms move faster than most other ships of the varying fleets. Then again, this game likes to completely disregard everything from the Arrival DLC, and pretty much everything else about the Reapers from the past games. And yeah, Arrival was probably the worst part of ME2, but it's canon, and to disregard it is irritating, as its events are the entire reason Shepard is even back on Earth or being held in captivity. Not for anything he did when his mission was funded by Cerberus, but a task he was assigned by Hackett himself. As Spectre Authority covers anything of questionable legality he did while trying to deal with the Collector threat. Except if you didn't do Arrival, it still defaults you to here and under house arrest for galactic-level crimes. But the Earth Alliance has no jurisdiction over you or your ship in such a scenario. The only time they would is if you refuse to retake your Spectre status in ME2, which would give you no valid standing as anything other than a Cerberus dog, which is what the game defaults to. I'm serious, the game treats you as if you never retook Spectre status in ME2.
You sure about that? No, but you were a Council Spectre. That has to count for something.
Thus, by ignoring Arrival, you not only generate more plot holes, it's once again evidence of the story railroading that takes place by changing the history of your own personal Shepard and their choices. As, do the DLC or no, had this opened with Shepard's trial for those events, even when you didn't do them in your own playthrough of ME2, you would legitimize this narrative path. No, instead Shepard is rushed out of his cell to meet the Defense Committee to advise them on the Reaper threat by his friend, Who the fuck are you? This is James Vega, one of our new companions for the game. While he and Shepard act like they've known each other for a long time, we never get much sense of how they met or became friends, and is certainly one of the more two-dimensional new additions to the cast on this game. Most of the new characters are like that, actually. All Vega has to him is, well, being a soldier. Steve Cortez, our later introduced shuttle pilot, at least has the nuances to him about losing his husband in a collector attack he's still getting over, alongside a dislike of being downgraded from being a fighter pilot to a glorified bus driver. Samantha Trainer likewise has the general feeling of a quirky individual being in over her head, which is also expanded onto her being tactically minded through the invitations to play her in chess, and further later on through the Citadel DLC. She's also responsible for one of the greatest brick jokes ever. Vega, not so much. His arc being around uncertainty whether he's a good enough soldier to join the N7 program he was accepted into just as Earth was attacked. Otherwise, he just gives people nicknames. I'd call him as bland as Caden was, but at least he's showcased to have a personality. Anyways, the walk to the committee reintroduces us to David Anderson, no longer a counselor because of narrative railroading to assume you've always picked Udina, even though Udina is a terrible fucking choice for counselor, who in the interim has been trying to organize anti-Reaper efforts. And of course, then there's fucking Ashley Williams.
Groovy.
No, not groovy. If you're someone who actually liked Ash in ME1, got pissed off in how awfully she acted or was treated in ME2 towards Shepard, and how she felt personally betrayed for Shepard actually working to save people, well, Mass Effect 3 takes that one moment of narrative contrivance to keep Ashley out of the story, and blows it even further out of proportion into straight-up character assassination. Ashley in and of herself in this game is used as an ongoing, running condemnation of the events of the second game. Not caring about the context or reason behind the actions we took, only about the superficial detail of us working for Cerberus. She doesn't care about the people we helped or the threats we eliminated, how we found technology or furthered alliances that could help us in this struggle, or turned several of Cerberus's resources to our side so they could be used to take down the terrorist organization. Only that we were at any point funded or given resources by them. As I played my Shepard, I never once considered myself or those who joined me of their own free will part of the organization, simply acting out a partnership that ended as soon as the threat of the Collectors ended. I did not trust Harper. I didn't give him anything which I could keep him from getting, as I knew it was a deal with a devil that would only come back to bite us if I ever bought into it. But here, every time Ash is around, she insults you for being part of that, and takes it as an ongoing personal betrayal and affront to her morals and existence, when amongst of all the companions and characters of the series, she is the one that most aligns with the core philosophy of Cerberus. Humanity first at any cost. Which makes her out to be nothing but a massive hypocrite in how she condemns someone and thing she agrees with. And worse, you just have to take it. No dialogue option you are presented with allows you to shut her up or refute her in any way. The Renegade path has you defending Cerberus' actions and your involvement with them instead of being angry Ashes once again being so closed-minded and twisting reality to fit her own definition of existence.
I reject your reality and substitute my own.
And the Paragon prompts are all half-assed justifications for your conduct which, surprise, surprise, are not actually reflective of refuting these accusations. Why? Because the writer did not want to refute them. And she is not the only one that does this. Pretty much everyone auto-assumes you were 100% full-on Cerberus dog, even those who know fully what went down with everything and should know better than that. You get the same condemnations from Jack. Jack of all people. You get it from Miranda. You get it from Taylor. Hell, you get it from Harper, who of all fucking people knows better than that. As do all of his subordinates. It gets so irritating that I just want her to shut the fuck up and go away. You could rationalize Ash's actions in ME2 of being misinformed and not aware of the reality of what we were doing until it was too late. That we were the same people we always were, and it was her that was the problem in not trusting us. But no. ME3 doubles down and assassinates the character. Literally. Which brings us to the Defense Committee, and oh dear God, if you wanted a microcosm to the awfulness of the writing in this game, well, screw the ending. This, my friends, is it.
The Reapers are here.
Then, how do we stop them?
Stop them. This isn't about strategy or tactics. This is about survival.
I can't. How do you... Ah! This is seriously one of the most idiotic conversations I have ever heard, as all Shepard says is ripped straight out of a morale rallying speech. And not just one, but cut together from a bunch of them that are aligned to wholly different thematics than this actual situation. Not outlining a plan for their defeat, but keeping them from giving up hope. Something that has not actually happened yet, and is completely at odds at what is actually being asked of him, as Shepard is the Reaper expert that is supposed to be suggesting a course of action. But here, Shepard not only doesn't answer the question, all that he says is out of context nonsense. And it's ridiculous how, right after saying this, there's a report of the Reapers outside of lunar orbit. And then suddenly, right after saying that, they've not only landed, but devastated London. And dozens of other world landmarks simultaneously. The time span for that all to happening is just ludicrous without any semblance of transition.
Space is warped and time is bendable.
What do we do?
The only thing we can. We fight, or we die. This isn't about strategy or tactics. This is about survival.
You are a fucking imbecile. The last two games have been about forming the solution to victory. And that is through not being a species elitist, but bringing everyone together. Hell, at this point, everyone should have cut and run. The Reapers are here in greatest force, attacking Earth. It should have been obvious triage. Get out who they can, abandon the sector, and blow the relay if possible. Reinforce other species' front lines to unify everyone in the galaxy to taking them down sector by sector. Gang up on Reaper after Reaper to take them down with just sheer masses of firepower in a long campaign. Mass Effect 2 showed us weapons and defensive technologies that can counteract Reaper-level technology, as it had been developed from the study of Nazara, but had yet to become standard issue or was otherwise esoteric equipment only just appearing first in the lawless Terminus systems, whereas such had been outlawed in Citadel space. And the Normandy alone is a ship that's equipped with them, and thus studying of them with the Normandy being in dry dock for refit should have allowed for analysis of the technology for implementation on, at the very least, other Alliance ships. The Normandy never uses the Thanix cannon or has the shields that can survive a blow from such energy weapons, and the equipment we gained which showed itself reflective of those advancements is never seen in this game used by anyone. All of that development towards putting the galaxy on the level of the Reapers technologically has been completely forgotten about or is rendered entirely moot. Sure, they say it happens in the Codex entries, but it is never reflected as existing or talked about being used at any point ever in the main storyline. That or such weapons are so severely depowered it becomes the same as the weapons that were around before that technological evolution, meaning their ability to counteract Reaper weapons is completely forgotten about. That's the bigger problem with this scene. It shows the Alliance has done nothing. Nothing at all, despite the evidence provided now from Mass Effect 2's story, and their own research into the Prothean archives that has confirmed this threat for them. They have built no strategy, not put Shepard's house arrest to any use. They have only now been shown to have been spinning their wheels ever since Nazara was taken down. And I say this is the better strategy because attempting to hold Earth is nothing but a lost cause. Them landing here is nothing but the worst case scenario, as it should mean that any hope of rallying the galaxy is now lost. But no, this game has a humanity-first tinge to it, ironically in line with the Cerberus doctrine it likes to deride. So, of course, the goal of this game is now to save Earth. I don't want to save Earth. We're in for the long haul this time, my friends. Prepare yourselves.
I'm in. Deploy now.